Greetings from Inverness. Jim here again, talking about the i4 electric cars and where I am. So follow my last video, which I pretty much made the allegation that the situation of electric cars in the UK is a bit of a lie, that it's far worse than anyone is led to believe. Had a lot of response to that, got a fair amount of views. And from that video, I've had lots of suggestions about different apps that I can use. Learned a lot about the situation in Germany and Norway. I keep getting reminded of this guy in Norway who ran an i4 for about 600 kilometres in the summer. But I've had nothing about what he's done in the winter, when things are slightly different. And that goes on to a little bit about the lie about electric vehicles, certainly in the UK. And a couple of things have happened. First of all, it's quite encouraging that this isn't just me. But it also had me thinking, why did I go down this route? And secondly, it's actually made me think it's worse than I actually thought it was, and has been for a while. So with this video, I'm going to do three things. I'm going to talk about the psychology of buying a little bit and why I buy and what happens. And it might ring some bells, but hopefully it will help those that are looking to move into electric cars check themselves. The second thing I'm going to talk about is how this lie, and it is a lie, is being perpetuated. And actually there's a huge amount of information that contradicts all the positive stuff that kind of gets buried. Some to do with psychology, some is absolutely deliberate. And the last thing is to talk about my situation, because I've been asked what the update is. So let's talk about why I went down this route. And it goes back quite a few years, probably about 2010, 2011, when I started to think about electric cars, and I dismissed them at that point as irrelevant. Publicity, things started changing mind. I'd say around about 2016, 2017, I started to think about I could have an electric car, attracted by lower costs, also sustainability, environmental concerns. So probably 2017 was the first time I seriously considered an electric car. I looked at Teslas and the charging network, was quite impressed, but I really couldn't afford one. Did some sensible calculations, and the cost of buying a Tesla as opposed to buying diesel, there was no savings, so I didn't do it. I think I bought a Jaguar F-Pace at that point. Car I loved, apart from the infotainment system, which was diabolically bad and never worked for 3 years I had it. I replaced that with my Mercedes GLC. Again, looked at electric vehicles. Didn't think that anything outside of Tesla was a serious consideration then. Still couldn't really afford a Tesla. So I bought the GLC. But carried on researching, carried on looking. And really at this point thinking next car is going to be electric. And electric technology has moved on significantly. Range has increased significantly. Charging network has improved significantly. And in the end, I convinced myself this was the right time. So let's talk about psychology, because if I'm totally honest with myself, there was plenty of signs out there that actually we're not ready. And it wasn't that I chose to ignore them. What it was that, because I wanted an electric car, psychologically, I boosted in my own brain the benefits, especially the cost benefits. And I minimised in my own brain the negatives. And then said to myself, okay, there's things I'm going to have to change in terms of my behaviour. But lie number one, which is perpetuated a lot, and I saw it in a video yesterday, you're going to stop for a coffee anyway, so why not charge? And you think, well, yeah, of course I'm going to stop. I always stop, and when I stop for a bit, I have a bite to eat. I'm not going to stop anymore. I'm going to stop the way I normally stop. That's a lie. Because you tend not to stop for an hour. You tend to stop and grab something and go again. Now, at least I do. And on motorway service stations especially, there's a time limit. You only get 2 hours to sit there for free, after which you pay, and you pay handsomely. So, but you convince yourself, right? I convince myself that's the change, it's going to be okay. And of course, you don't have to be on a motorway service station. You can go off and in that we planned our journey down. We planned to go off the motorway and find a cheaper site. But one of the different, if you're doing a petrol vehicle, you can go off the motorway and find much cheaper petrol. That is not true with the electric charging network. The rate is the rate is the rate, and it tends not to be that much higher on a motorway as it is off a motorway. But my psychology was, I can get around this, I can afford this, this is good. I looked at lots of comparisons, and going earlier in the year where the price of fuel was rocketing, so was the price of electric. Now the price of fuel has come down, price of electric has stayed steady, even though the global price of energy has dropped. I've not heard anything about energy companies going, hey, where's that going? Let's drop our prices. So I convinced myself this was right. And the second lie, which is look at what journeys you're doing most of the time, which is true. You do the running around and it's fine. If you're only doing 1 or 2 long journeys a year, it's not a problem, blah, blah, blah. Actually, people do a lot more longer journeys than they might think. It's not a once a year thing. If you've got relatives and you go for lunch, or you've got weddings, or you do whatever, it can be a lot more than 1 journey a year. And you're adding on 2 to 3 hours onto that journey, depending how long it is, assuming you can get on a charger. So this brings me on to the next part of the video, which is the perpetuation of the lie. So the psychology that I have is I want to buy one, and so although the signs are there, I kind of ignore them. So then you get, there's been a couple of things in the press over Christmas. One was that in London over Christmas there were queues at Tesla chargers as people travelled more. Remember this? You always charge at home and you don't need to charge on the public charger and it's all very easy. So if that's true, why over Christmas are there queues at Tesla chargers? It doesn't add up. If we're only doing 1 long journey a year, which is one of the constant things in these videos, then why are the queues? Does it make sense? Perpetuation of the lie. The second article I read was in The Guardian. I'm a Guardian reader. And it was, great news, wonderful news. The charging network has grown by 30% in the UK. So there's lots more high-speed chargers out there. Yeehaw, go and buy an electric car. But a very small thing come afterwards. It then said the growth of electric cars is actually 38%. So there's an 8% difference. So although the charging network is going up, yeehaw, celebrate, the growth of cars is going up, which actually means the growth of the vehicles is outstripping the growth of the network, and it's already straining. But the way it's put across is good news, this is great for you, not hang on a sec, there's more cars out there than there are chargers. And then at the bottom of the article was also some things about reporting queues over Christmas at lots of chargers as people moved around. On this one journey they're doing a year, there's an extra one. So if, like me, psychologically you are looking for the good news to reinforce the argument to go and spend the £60,000 on a car, then what happens is you only read the good news and the little bits put in that's given minimal focus, because nobody wants to spoil this thing of saving the planet through electric vehicles. you then convince yourself, or I did. The second thing I've noticed, I was watching a video yesterday done by Whatcar, which was a direct comparison of electrics and petrol, where they went from Cobham services on the M25 in Surrey up to Leeds. They did it in BMW i4 and a BMW M4, I think, going up, and they did it in a couple of Peugeots on the way back down. And a direct comparison. This was done in the summer when fuel was the cost of petrol was £1.99 a litre on the motorway, and they were doing 69p per kilowatt hour on Ionity chargers, also on the motorway. So they used the same service station and they were consistent. And it was more expensive by £20, I think, to do the journey by electric vehicle than it was to do the journey by ICE vehicle. And it was very clear. I hadn't seen the video before, probably because I don't know why. What they didn't spend a lot of time on, though, when they were going up and they're on the Ionity chargers, when the guy got there, it was full. What he didn't record, though, was how long he had to wait before he got on a charger. So he got the cost. And this was a pretty balanced video, I have to say. It was a pretty good video all around. But it didn't say, actually, I had to wait 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour for a charger. And when they charged at Cobham, I don't know if there's any wait. I know Cobham's one of the busiest service stations in the country. And I know in the summer months, you queue to get in. So I thought you're going to have 4, 6, 8 chargers all sitting there empty for you just to pull up. I think it's absolute fantasy. But what happens across the press is this much greater focus on what is good. While the bad is mentioned, it is not mentioned in the same way or in the same deliberate pointing out this is a problem. And if you're like me, you've convinced yourself you want an electric car, then it's easy to find the evidence to say, go and do it. So if you're thinking of an electric car, have a word with yourself. Question what you're being told. Firstly, this thing of how many long journeys do you do? How many times are you on a motorway? And in fact, it's an easy thing to do. Just keep a diary for 3 months about what your mileage is, what your journeys are, and where you go. And as soon as you enter a motorway, how busy is it? When you get to service stations, look out for the chargers, see how busy they are, and you can start to get yourself a much more real picture. The other thing to do is do what people do to me when I'm sat on a charger. They come up and knock on my window and say, tell me about this. And every one of those people has been someone who's been looking at an electric car. And I've said, hey, this is our 3rd charge of the day. This is... So it is still true that if you are only doing local journeys, can survive from your charge at home. If your commute is less than, it's a 50-mile commute, this is going to be fine. But as an all-year-round car do everything, they've got a long, long way to go. So what's happening with me? So I said before that I was getting rid of my i4. I was going to get a 5 Series PHEV instead. So I haven't driven my car since that fateful weekend. I just don't want to get in it. I haven't charged it. It's been sat on my drive doing nothing. And I've got a Golf, little petrol Golf that I use for whizzing around, and I've been using that. I've had plenty of time to reflect. I have a business trip next week when I have to get down to England. I've got to pick someone up along the way. That is right down to Basingstoke, which is about 700 miles from here. So that's a big trip. And if I do it in the electric car, we're driving down to Oxford, staying over in Oxford, then driving down to Basingstoke next day. I'm looking at adding 2 to 3 hours onto the journey. I've I've got to collect some in Edinburgh, so I will need to charge before I get there. We'll need to charge before we get to, so I'll need looking at least 2 full charges before I get there. And I just don't want to do it, especially on the way back, because on the way back we'll have been working all day. We're going to split the journey down to 2. We do have to stop to do work calls, Zoom calls. The thought that I've got to add into that charging, and it's come back to lie again that when you're going to stop for work calls, you might as well find a charger. But if the charger's not available, I can't get on it. It just causes another level of stress. So I just don't want to drive the car. I just don't want to go back out there again and deal with this. However, Arnold Clark, who I don't have the best of opinion at the best of time, I've dealt with them on a couple of occasions. They've been hacked, and because of that, they can't put any cars out. And so the car is there, it's waiting to go. We've discussed it, but I can't get it. I can't get it until their IT system works again. The good news is it's given me time to really think about what do I want to do. I've had time to calm down, cool down, reevaluate. But I'm still going to change. The financial loss really hurts, and a few people said I'm lucky enough to be able to do this. I am. I know that, but that doesn't mean I go yippee, thank you. I just don't want to keep the Eiffel. I just don't want it, because I do have to do longer journeys. I don't have to do them all the time. So that's what's happening. That's it. So as soon as I get it, I will do some videos on it and do some comparisons. And one thing I am very aware of, the claim mileage, something like 150 miles. It's Fantasyland. Why are they allowed to put these numbers up? Why aren't trading standards or someone going, this is a complete and utter fantasy? The reality I can glean from YouTube videos and reading stuff is that a PHEV will deliver a similar MPG to a diesel. So around 40 to 50 miles per gallon combined. It can be greater for all those short journeys. The BMW claim range is about 35 miles. The reality seems to be range between about 25 and 35. I've seen some quite different videos where people get different numbers. So that is the next issue. So my expectation is to get around about a combined 45 miles to the gallon from the petrol engine and from the electric engine, more so around town than on a run. But we'll see what it actually is when we actually get it. So needless to say, my expectation is not quite what it was when I got the electric. I have considered just doing petrol, and the longer I have to wait for the car, the more I might still go down that route. But I'm still quite keen on staying partly electric, and I absolutely don't want to go diesel. I just don't want to do it. So that decision is made. It will be either a PHEV or it will be a petrol. If they get the live sorted out, it'll probably be the PHEV and be the 5 Series. It's a lovely car. So that's where we are. That's what's going on. And thanks for watching. And I wish you well. Take care.